Ballard Sports Media, coming at you with a podcast. I am so used to saying Ballard Sports Media. I am Ballard Sports Media, of course, if you know my channel. But I started up this channel last week, episode 2 of the Christian Ballard Podcast. Hope to get guests on very soon. I want to get the Unprofessional Sports Show main guy, Chess Hall. I want to get my Touchdowns co-host, Mayhem Matthew. I want to get those guys and some other friends. I do want to get athletes, maybe coaches if I'm lucky. Who do you want to see on this podcast? Let me know. But for now, we're doing a couple episodes solo style. It's just me. We don't have anything scheduled with guests at the moment, but we do want to talk college football. I don't want this podcast to just be college football, but I did come up with something interesting today. So, as you can see by the title, top 25 teams that could fail to begin 2024. Now, as you're watching this, we have week 1 this weekend. We know that Florida State, being ranked number 10, lost to Georgia Tech, and there's been a lot of criticism. That's a team that's already failed. When I say fail, you got to technically look at the first couple weeks of the season. And there's a lot of teams out there that have really tough schedules. There's also a lot of teams that have it pretty easy when you look at what they have. So you look at the top 25, you look at Georgia number 1. Well, they got to play Clemson in Atlanta. Clemson's number 14 in the top 25. Keep an eye on that. Ohio State opens up pretty easily, but then you get down to it with the new Big Ten. They have to eventually in October play Iowa at home and at Oregon. What about going to Michigan State September 28th? That's interesting to me in terms of we don't know what Jonathan Smith and the Spartans are going to look like to start out the season. They do have to go to Happy Valley. But we want to talk about how top 25 teams that could fail early on to begin the season. It doesn't even have to be week 1, but I want to look at teams within that first month of the year, of the college football season, however you want to put it. Within August 31st to September 28th or October 5th or whatever. Interesting games. There's going to be some good ones to look at. We already have Florida State and Georgia Tech. Don't look at a game because both teams are not ranked. Like, for example, okay, Penn State goes to West Virginia. West Virginia is not ranked. There's a lot of hype around Penn State. It's in Morgantown. They're only favored by 8 points. But if they lose that game and West Virginia plays spoiler, watch out for the Mountaineers. But that's a team that kind of failed us. We have high expectations for James Franklin and Penn State to possibly be one of the 12 best teams in the college football playoff in 2024. I don't look at a game like Virginia Tech and Vandy. I think they're kind of on the same level. I think it's interesting because it's at Vanderbilt and it's a ACC-SEC matchup, but they're not ranked. They're not ranked. Miami, number 19, goes to Florida. I mentioned that just a second ago. That's a team that could fail early. They're only favored by 2.5. Only favored by 2.5. They got to basically win by 3 to cover that spread, but also forget the spread for a second. They're just a better team. There's not a lot of hype around Florida right now. Now, they could be better this year. They got a really difficult schedule, but some of their home games are manageable. I mean, you're going to beat teams like Samford, I would assume, and UCF, and maybe Kentucky. We'll see. That's at least 3 wins. But what if you get a statement victory on August 31st and it's 3:30 in the afternoon or so? By the time that game ends, it's probably 5:30, 6 o'clock, 7 almost. I don't know. But that evening, you get a victory stamp. You beat Miami. That's huge. You got to play LSU and Ole Miss later on in the season. Miami, when you look at their schedule, it's very interesting. because they have the non-con favorable, but they do have to play Virginia Tech at home. They do have to host Florida State and Duke. They got to go to Louisville. They got to go to Georgia Tech, who they lost to at home last year. That was Georgia Tech's game of the year. Signature win was Miami. They took off after that, right? That, and I believe they also beat UNC. But think about Miami for a second. Who needs that game more? I think Miami, because of the hype, they struggled a little bit last year, but they bring a lot back, and they just they had so much talent, good recruiting, to the point that I'm not saying they got to win a natty or anything, but if they're not one of the teams in the ACC title, I don't know what to do with them. They've never won the ACC since they got in 2004, 2005. They've made a championship. They've never won it. This is their year to do that. So I look at that top 25 team, and again, they're currently ranked 19. I think that's reasonable to put them in there. But if they lose that Florida game, are they going to be unranked? Are they going to drop to 25? How low do they fall? And where does Florida fit in the top 25? Miami could lose that game. It's a rivalry game. It's on the road. Difficult environment in the swamp. It might not be at night, but in the afternoon, early afternoon, whatever, it's still very tough. Not that they could overlook Florida for anybody. They're not going to overlook Florida for Florida A&M or Ball State or USF their next 3 games after that. They have no excuse to lose this game other than they just struggle a little bit against Florida and what Florida has, which really isn't much. And again, this isn't a bashing of Florida. This isn't to bash any teams today. That's a team that could fail to begin the season. USC is ranked 23. Interesting. So if LSU, who by the way is ranked number 13, I kind of look at both of these teams, and it's interesting because both of these teams play to open the year. They play the Sunday night game, I believe that's right, before Labor Day in Vegas. A Vegas kickoff is very new to college football. There are a lot of new things. The USC is in the Big Ten now. USC could fail to open the season. LSU could also fail to open the season. There's a lot of different teams, but I want to look at this game and look at those 2 teams and what they have. Both are coming off bowl wins last year. Both got rid of their quarterbacks in the NFL. Of course, Chicago Bears took Caleb Williams, and the Washington Commanders took Jaden Daniels of LSU. I look at this game, and I say, okay, who's favored? Well, when you look at it, it is in favor of LSU by 4.5 points. I don't know what it is other than a lot of people are really writing off Lincoln Riley and USC because of how they struggled last year when they had no excuse for that. LSU has a 55.4% chance to win the game. They got to play Nichols the following week, following Saturday at least. They got to go to South Carolina. They host UCLA. Not easy games. South Alabama, you should be okay. Ole Miss, not easy. At Arkansas, say whatever you want to about Arkansas. I say on the road in the SEC for teams like LSU is usually pretty tough. At Texas A&M, not easy. Home against Bama, not easy. At Florida in the swamp late in the year. Again, say what you want about Florida. That's a tough rivalry and a tough place to go. Vandy, you'll probably take care of, but we'll see. And you end the year with Oklahoma at home. Not easy. That's LSU. Who needs this victory more? It's very interesting because USC needs to bounce back. LSU needs to prove that they're not a product of Jaden Daniels. They can do it with whoever's at quarterback, and their recruiting is off the charts, and they have the talent, and they have this. And Brian Kelly has a lot of hype as a head coach, and he's had a tremendous resume going back to Notre Dame and everything as a head coach. So is Lincoln Riley. The only thing we say wrong about Lincoln Riley is he doesn't play defense and he's never won a playoff game. Outside of that, recruits greatly, can use the portal, can coach up an offense more, like probably better than almost anybody else in the league. I say almost anybody. I know there's a couple other guys out there. It's almost a coin flip. Like you could flip a coin over who needs this win more. But I look at USC's schedule. I say, hey, you got to go to the big house. Hey, you got to play Penn State. Hey, you got to go to UCLA. You got to play Notre Dame. You got these teams on your schedule that are going to make it tough. You got these teams that are going to give you a run for your money. You have that. Both of these teams being ranked and then being on the field on Sunday to play each other, someone's got to lose. And no matter who loses that game, it's going to sting. Oh, what if they win out? They're not winning out. USC's not going to win out if they lose to LSU, nor is LSU going to win out if they lose to USC. That's a pivotal game. Those are two. You got number 13 and number 23, LSU, USC. Someone's got to win that game. Someone's also got to lose. But who needs it more? I think it's really it's really close and it's hard to tell. I think you could make a case easily that both teams need it as much as the next team. It's in Vegas. It's more so out west. There's probably going to be more Trojan fans out there than there are Tiger fans. I don't know. LSU comes in a 4.5-point favorite. They have a 55.4% chance to win it. They're saying it's going to be 105 degrees outside, but you'll be in a dome at Allegiant Stadium. 6:30 on Sunday, Central Time, of course. Someone has to win that game. Who needs it more? I got to hear from you guys in the comments section. So I look at a couple different teams out there. Georgia and Clemson play each other Saturday. Penn State, West Virginia play at the same time. Penn State could lose in Morgantown. I mentioned that. Clemson, Georgia, 1 versus 14. Someone's got to lose. Clemson could pull an upset, no problem, if they're good. Dabo Swinney's got a heck of a resume, great coach. Problem is, no transfers. Georgia, they get transfers out the gutter if they want to. I mean, they get players left and right. Georgia's got the talent. Georgia's the better team. They're going to beat Clemson. But Clemson, I think, has to win that game. Has to. And it's not the end of the world if they don't. It's just you look at your overall record against Georgia, you look at recency and how you have games down the road with NC State and Florida State. You have a couple difficult games in there. You got a couple good ones though too. You do have to play South Carolina at the end of the year, but it's going to be tough against Georgia. It really is. And I think they need one signature win on their schedule. If, let's say, they win the ACC, or if they don't and they finish 10-2 or something. Here's my case for why Clemson needs to beat Georgia. Is because of their schedule. Oh, but it's week 1. Yeah, exactly. You could get a signature stamp win right then and there. You have that opportunity if you're Clemson. Because what's next? App State. It's a good team. Not good enough for Clemson. Not good enough to build a resume. NC State comes in 24. What if they fail the first couple weeks? I haven't even looked at their schedule. I don't know what they have. I think they play Tennessee. Interesting game there. Stanford, no. At Florida State, did you watch the Georgia Tech game? I mean, that could be a good road win, but obviously Florida State not going to look like what we expected. I don't know what we expected other than they got blown out last time we saw them take the field. and then they lose to Georgia Tech. DJ doesn't look good. At Wake Forest, Virginia, Louisville, at Virginia Tech, the Citadel, at Pitt. You have to hope. If you're Clemson, you got to hope that the bottom half of your schedule, those teams do something this year. Not that they're good enough to beat you, but they're good enough to give you a good game. And you could say, we beat a team with only 2 losses, 3 losses, whatever it was, or we beat a ranked team, or that's what you have to hope for. So I think Clemson needs to win that game against Georgia. Now, is it going to happen? Honestly, I'm not going to say no. I'm not going to say yes either. I would take Georgia right now. But it's possible they could pull an upset. They need that victory more so than Georgia does because Georgia plays in a tougher conference. They got teams they could get later on like Alabama or Texas. Clemson needs to win more. So must-win teams for 2024, Clemson start the season off strong. Could they fail to begin 2024? Yes. And it's actually probably likely. Probably likely. The other top 25 teams out there, I won't go through all of them. Michigan, the reigning champs at number 9. Penn State at number 8. We mentioned West Virginia. They're not ranked. Oklahoma in the SEC, they come in at 16. What do they have? Temple, Houston, Tulane, good teams. Could be tough on the Sooners, all at home. Tennessee at home on September 21st. Tennessee is ranked number 15 right now. Then they go to Jordan-Hare Stadium to take on the Auburn Tigers on the 28th. Auburn's not ranked right now, but let's say if they get off to a hot start, they could be ranked. You could have maybe a top 25 matchup. Oklahoma's right now at number 16 in the rankings. They need some victories to get started. They cannot look sloppy because it gets tougher as the season goes on. If you want to build a playoff resume, you will win those first 3 games, maybe drop a team like Tennessee, Texas, Auburn. Drop no more than 2 of those 3 games, win out, and you'll probably be respected and in. Because, and I say it's those 3, because let's say you drop Auburn, but you also drop Tennessee, you'd have a win over Texas. Or you beat Auburn, you drop Tennessee and Texas. But let's say, what if you get Ole Miss and Missouri and Alabama and LSU later on? I doubt it. I mean, Oklahoma could easily go from 7-5 to 9-3. Somewhere in there is what they'll go. But that's a team that has to start out big the first half of the season. Being ranked in the top 25, they could fail to begin 2024. And again, we're not just going based off week 1. We're talking maybe the first month or 2 of the season before it's midway through. I look at that September 21st schedule for Oklahoma against Tennessee. You could lose that. That's failed. It's not bad, but it's failed. And you lost a game, right? Oklahoma's in there. Tennessee, I would say the same thing. It's vice versa, playing Oklahoma in Norman. Who else does Tennessee get? They got to play NC State, I mentioned. They got to play Florida. They got to play Alabama. Later in the year, they get teams like Georgia and Mississippi State and Kentucky, but they're ranked right now. I expect them to be ranked all season long. The question is, if they start losing games or they lose a game or 2, they're going to go down, but then they can pick it up with a win. They go back up the ranks, right? Probably going to make the 12-team playoff for Tennessee. Probably going to happen. I would bet on it. Not money, but I wouldn't be surprised. Missouri's another team out there. Any SEC ranked team right now, Alabama, Georgia, Texas, Oklahoma, whoever. Other teams out there, talk about the Big 12 getting some Pac-12 teams in there. Utah, they play Baylor week 2. They go to Utah State. They go to Oklahoma State. They play home against Arizona. All this after their opener against Southern Utah on the 29th. Later in the year, you got to go to Houston and Colorado and UCF. Iowa State at home. TCU at home. Some of those home games are going to be winnable, but I worry about that road schedule for the Utes. I worry about what they have. I don't think that they are going to be a bad team. I say they lose no more than maybe 3 games if I'm betting right now. Oklahoma State could be a loss. UCF late in the year. What's Colorado going to look like? Houston, Arizona. Arizona and Oklahoma State are back-to-back weeks. Both teams ranked right now. That's going to be tough. Got to hear from you guys in the comments. Would love to hear from you guys. Top 25 teams that could fail for 2024 in college football. Texas A&M. Texas A&M. Bring them on down. They are ranked number 20. I bring them up to bring up Notre Dame on Saturday night. Notre Dame could fail losing in Kyle Field. But also A&M, they don't look too good. They don't really have signature victories that they could get on the schedule other than maybe Missouri at home. Their tough games are at home, outside of going to the Swamp, going to Auburn. But you get Texas at home, you get LSU at home, you get Missouri at home, Notre Dame's at home. That first game of the season, Texas A&M, I think, has to win that game. But also I look at Notre Dame. I look at the fact that they've had gone undefeated to make the playoff. I think it's a little bit different. But Notre Dame, always plays tough environments and tough teams. Notre Dame could fail this season if they're not careful. They go to Kyle Field. They go to Purdue on September 14th. Don't sleep on that. We don't know what they're going to look like. That's a tough place to go. Ask Ohio State from a few years ago. Louisville at home. Stanford, I'll give you Stanford. That's a tough rivalry, though. Georgia Tech. Florida State, say whatever you want to. That's still going to be tough late in the year. What if Florida State gets it together? And then at USC on rivalry weekend. It's a tough schedule for Notre Dame and Texas A&M after that opener to begin the year. Other teams, there's so many teams we could go to. I got to hear from you guys in the comments. I think I've said everything I wanted to say for this episode. I got other stuff to record. Hopefully these are longer. Hopefully we get guests on going forward with this podcast. Episode 2 is in the books here for the Christian Ballard Podcast. Be sure to like and subscribe. Top 25 teams that could fail to begin 2024. I talked about possibly Utah, Oklahoma, Notre Dame, Texas A&M. There's a couple different teams out there. Florida State, you've already failed. You already failed. But it's going to be an interesting season, and I'm excited to be a part of it with all of you. I love you guys. Thanks so much for tuning in. God bless you. God loves you. I love you. Thanks so much, and have a great day. Christian Ballard here at 92.1 WKUL.